Welcome back, everybody. Good to be with you. We go further into the third chapter today. I'm realizing that I'm going to have to skip over so many important verses, and in future months we'll go into smaller parts of the Gita together and get in more to the details. So we're just going fast now, but still so much good stuff to be gained there. We ended with text number 9, wherein Krishna told Arjuna that rather than walk away from the world and renounce action, you should engage in action. You should work in this world. You should be dutiful. You should do your duties. But that you should do them as a sacrifice for Vishnu, not to get something for yourself, but as an act of sacrifice, as an offering. And one might argue, well, okay, that's an interesting idea. But when we work in this world, when we embrace these social roles that we have in this world and perform these social duties in this world, so many undesirable things can come from that, like the identification with the body. I am a man, I am a woman, I am the parent, I am American, I am a businessman, I am all these different things. That tends, when we get involved with the world like that tends to stick with us. And the feelings of attachment come from that. And the feelings of belonging to people or to places or to communities, etc. And these become our predispositions. They become that kind of works. It seems to come with those kind of misunderstandings, those kind of predispositions, those kind of attachments. And so that sounds like a problem. Krishna is going to address that problem. He's going to say that there's a way out of that, and that's by turning it into sacrifice. In really interesting verses come up. In text 10, essentially what he says is that he begins to speak in a very Vedic way. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of your creation, the Lord of all creatures, sent forth generations of men and demigods along with sacrifice for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy in this yagna, in this sacrifice. For by its performance, it will bestow upon you everything desirable. The idea is that we flourish through sacrifice. This is the point, that the principle of sacrifice is coded into the universe to help us evolve. If this universe is a virtual reality, Krishna is the coder. And he's coded in this principle of sacrifice to help us evolve. In other words, even to prosper materially, it requires sacrifice. And the Vedic literature teaches about how you can perform these sacrifices and be dutiful, etc., and gain materially. Krishna is saying that that's coded right into the universe. But it's a good thing. Yes, you can, on a lower level, you may engage that way to enjoy this world, and you will become entangled if you do that. But on a higher level, we can see that it's through sacrifice that we begin to uncover our eternal nature, which is divine and which is to love and to serve. So here's one example. Let's take a relationship. Let's say like maybe a wedding, a marriage relationship, or husband and wife. Everyone knows that to have a long-lasting, healthy relationship is going to require sacrifice. And if there's no sacrifice, if someone isn't giving up their time and giving up their energy, giving up their services to the partner, hopefully giving up their heart, right? But if they're not sacrificing in this way, then the marriage is going to fall apart. And if they are sacrificing in this way, but doing it either like begrudgingly or with the motive to get something for it, well, then that will be a healthier relationship because the sacrifice is there. But it's still not the fully evolved stage, and there's likely to be struggles in that relationship. But when one sacrifices out of love, when one gives to please the other rather than to get something for themselves, then that kind of sacrifice is the healthy state of awareness, the healthy state of consciousness, the healthy relationship. And it's exactly that type of evolution that Krishna is trying to get us to understand here. That if we move through this world, if we're going to prosper, if we're going to flourish, we need to sacrifice. You can do that sacrifice to get something, but you'll develop attachments and you'll suffer because of that still. But what you need to do is to learn to give without wanting to receive, to perform your work in this world without the desire for the fruits of it, to make it a sacrifice, to sacrifice your time, your energy, your wealth, and sacrifice it ultimately in a way where you're not asking anything back, but you want to do it because you're pleasing the one that you love. That's called bhakti. And this, by coding sacrifice right in to the universe, it's a way of getting us to begin to move in that direction of giving, offering, and ultimately being concerned with offering without wanting something in return. Now we're evolving. So in text 9 and 10, he describes that. In 11, he describes this, how this sacrifice is coded right into the universe. And then he gives this example of how in the Vedic literature it talks about how even the very food that we get, that comes from rains, and rains come from sacrifice, as is taught in the Vedic literature. And those sacrifices are coming from the Vedic literature, and the Vedic literature is coming from the divine, right? From the supreme. And so these acts of sacrifice, these acts of offering, that maybe the word sacrifice rubs people a little wrong because we think of animal sacrifice or something like that. Think of offering, learning to offer, that a code of offering is coded into, a principle of offering is coded into this world. And even the food that we get comes to us through acts of offering. And that act of offering, we can trace it back from, the earth to the rain, to the acts of offering, which come from the Vedas, which come from Vishnu or come from Krishna. And so the divine is permeating the entire principle, the entire system, and therefore we should try to learn to follow that. And then Krishna begins to speak of someone who's on another level. These acts of sacrifice are meant to help us evolve, to help heal us from our self-centeredness or our selfishness, right? Learn to offer. But for one, he says in text 17, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for that person there's no duty, there's no work for them to do. Because the duties that we do, the prescribed duties that are part of our sacrifice or our offering, are in a sense a type of medicine to help us evolve out of our selfishness. But if someone is so knowledgeable and so elevated and so detached that they're not looking to take anything from this world or from other people to find happiness, they've already found it inside, they don't need to perform any duties in this world. They don't need medicine. They're already healed. So in text 18, Krishna says, a self-realized person has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of prescribed duties, nor have they any reason not to perform them, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. So he's saying, Arjuna, if you were that kind of person, you wouldn't need to do any duty in this world. But still, there's no reason for you not to. And the fact is that seeing you in such a state of confusion and perplexity, it indicates that duty is good for you. You need to engage that mind rather than sit still. If you had a peaceful mind, you could sit still and be a renounced yogi. You need to be a karma yogi. You need to be active in this world. And then in text 19, he says, and this is where we get to that evolution. Really nice verse. He's saying that sacrifice offered without any attachment, that's the path to the supreme. That's where it will take you, right? Don't learn just to sacrifice. Don't sacrifice just to get the material things of this world. Learn, get in that mood of sacrifice, and then begin to let go of your attachments, right? That will lead you to the supreme. Text 19. Without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme, right? Again, this karma yoga is working, but reflecting on the knowledge, I'm not this body, I'm not these senses, I'm not this mind. The things of this world are temporary. They may bring temporary satisfaction, but then they give pain when they fall apart, when they disappear, when things change. So learn to sacrifice, meditating, reflecting on that kind of knowledge. You'll develop detachment, and now you begin to sacrifice in a natural, selfless way. That's a big step forward. Moving along, I have to move quickly, but he's going to go deeper into this nishkama karma yoga. He's going to give examples of people that performed it, that were dutiful with detachment, and how they set a wonderful example that way. He's saying, Arjuna, even if you were that kind of person, you should work in this world and be dutiful, do karma yoga, rather than walking away from the world and being a sannyasi. You should do karma yoga because it sets the right example. Whatever a great person does, common people follow. Kings like Janaka did that in the past, even though they were qualified to walk away from the world. And Krishna says, even myself in text 22, there's no need for Krishna to overcome his attachments in this world, but he works in this world to set the right example. And that's important. We see that sometimes someone in spiritual circles, they're encouraged to renounce the world when they still have internal attachments. And ultimately that will lead to their system will fall apart. Their practice will fall apart. So Krishna will say in text 26, do not disturb the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results or the results of their prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce them to stop work, rather by working in the spirit of devotion, by working in a spirit of offering, they will gradually elevate themselves. So these are all real important texts. It moves on, and there's quite a few verses there that talk about the power of the modes of material nature. That within this world there are three energies that are very present in every object. These energies are invested, and they radiate from whatever we're in contact with, whatever sound, whatever sight, whatever smell, whatever we're hearing, whatever we're seeing. It radiates an influence, and that influence is one of the three modes of material nature. It either leads us towards greater clarity and contentment, or towards more intense desire for that which we don't have or feel we don't have, or ultimately in darker places towards laziness and destruction and even self-destruction. That's the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance. And he's saying that those modes are powerful. If we just try to walk away from the world before we become relatively free of their influence, then they're just going to pull us back in. Therefore, better to be engaged in karma yoga. And then in text 30, there's another one of these verses where Krishna says, he mentions himself. Like we saw in text 61 in chapter 2. This is a Krishna factor verse, right? This is a verse where Krishna is saying that if you do all that I'm saying, not just as a yogi, but as a bhakti yogi, if you do it for me, focused on me, it makes all the difference. So in text 30, he says, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works, not just surrendering the works, but surrendering them unto me in full knowledge of me, without any desire for profit. You're doing this as an offering with no claims of proprietorship. Who am I to own anything? Everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is Krishna's energy. And free from lethargy, right? With enthusiasm and with determination. Fight, Arjuna. Be dutiful. Do your work, but do it in Krishna consciousness, right? Do it with a mind and a heart absorbed in thought and remembrance of Krishna. And that will deliver you to this highest stage. So he says that people that do their duties according to his injunctions and who follow these teachings faithfully, without any envy, without any animosity in their life, they become free from all the bondage. Don't worry, Arjuna, you will not become bound by this work. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and don't follow them, they're considered to be bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So these are really, there's so many important instructions in these verses. Arjuna will turn to him, and the important mention is there, it's better to do your own duty than to do someone else's. Maybe we'll discuss more about that later. There's a fascinating verse 27 that says that the bewildered soul, under the influence of the ego, thinks themselves the doer of their activities, but they're actually carried out by these three modes of material nature. There's so much to go into here that we really don't have the time. But the chapter ends, the end begins with chapter 36 and goes up to text 36 through text 43, where Arjuna, he's heard this talk about how powerful the modes of material nature is, how they make us behave in ways, how we become controlled by them. And he asks, Krishna, by what is one impelled to these kind of actions, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Sometimes it feels like we're pulled in directions, even we know that they're not good for us. And Krishna says that it is kama, it is desire, or you can translate it as lust, programmed into our mind, right? Pulls us and drags us into these kind of actions. He says that he begins to describe where it's situated, that it's situated in the senses, that it's situated in the mind, and it's situated in the intelligence, that this kind of virus has spread throughout the computer of our system. And he says there's a way out of it, and that's by regulating the senses, right? By regulating your senses, you can slay this destroyer of knowledge and realization, this deeply encoded material desire. So he's going to encourage him to regulate his life as a karma yogi. In this way, keep his mind engaged and his senses engaged, which wouldn't be so well engaged if he went out into the cave and sat alone. And he ends with text 43 by saying, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust or known as desire. It's a powerful chapter. We went quickly through it. If you have questions, please send them into questions for the number 4, questions4kd@gmail.com, and we'll answer them. We had a nice Q&A session today. Over 100 people dropped in for that. We'll be having them in the coming weeks as well. Thank you all so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.